JJ, like we said at the start of the show when we were teasing this season in the Bundesliga has been fascinating. We're desperate to talk more about it with someone who covers it in depth. And here to do that with us today is Jonathan Harding. His work has appeared in The Athletic, ESPN, 442 magazine. He's a great follow, like I said, on Twitter at JohnBlog66. Jonathan, what's up, man? How are you?
I'm well. Thank you for that fantastic intro. I appreciate it.
Well, I've been
Thank,
reading your
thank
stuff on
you.
German football for ages.
Well, thank you.
So yeah, no, welcome.
Let's dive into it and let's start at the top. Bayer Leverkusen. So before I guess getting into even like the specifics of where we're at now, let's go back. Take yourself back, August, right before the season kicked off. What, if anything, were people expecting from this Leverkusen side?
I mean, certainly not this. I think with Xabi Alonso, I think people thought top four. I think that they thought that they had a good chance at the top four. Maybe, if we're being honest, maybe top six. But I think that some people thought, yeah, maybe with a little bit of luck, he'll get top four. I don't think it's any secret that Xabi Alonso didn't necessarily come into this having done an excellent job beforehand. It's not like he had an amazing CV coming into the job and people were like, he's going to blow everyone away. And I think that the squad was pretty set. I thought that Xhaka's arrival was kind of a key piece. I think people maybe have underestimated that. But I don't think there was any expectation that they would do anything near what they ended up doing. I think people thought that they would be, as so often is the case in Germany, that fourth team, right? Like everybody thinks it'll be Bayern and Dortmund, and then probably Leipzig, and then it's another team that has a good year. Is it Frankfurt? Is it Gladbach like it was a few years ago? Is it Leverkusen? And then there's always this like cycle, or Wolfsburg. There's always a cycling team. One of these teams has a good year and hits the ground running. And I think people thought with Xabi Alonso that they had a chance of being that team this year, but no one in their wildest dreams thought that they would end up doing anything like they've done.
So what is the atmosphere there like at the moment? Because I remember when Leicester City did the improbable and people were tracking it from everywhere. And now I find myself constantly checking in on this unbeaten run. And there's a fervor here for it and an interest. Is that matched in Germany?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, every time they play, everybody is thinking, oh, this is the week, right? This is the week the run ends. And I think what makes it all the more incredible is that it probably should have ended about 6 or 7 times this season, but this side has this unbelievable way of scoring goals late on. I mean, the Dortmund game recently where they have that header in the last minute. I mean, even the Roma game in the Europa League, if you're just talking about the context of their whole season, not just the Bundesliga, there are so many incidents where you just thought, okay, this is the week they lose 2-1. Stuttgart, that game where they were definitely out, didn't even play well, should have been, completely out of it. The absolute last second of the game, Robert Andrich hits it in this goalmouth scramble in a corner. And I think people thought, okay, this side doesn't know how to lose. Originally, the thought was, oh, it'll be interesting to see how they react when they lose. Then they had this situation where they stayed alive 2 or 3 or 4 times, and then people said, oh, they don't know how to lose. And now people are just laughing. People are just laughing at how ridiculous this run is because, quite frankly, what else are you going to say? I mean, how many times can a team score equalizers in injury time? How many times can a side go without losing a game? It's crazy. There's so much excitement here, not only because the achievement could be so historic. I mean, it already is, but could be even more in the pantheon of football history. But it's Leverkusen. That it's this team doing it. It's not Bayern Munich. It's not Borussia Dortmund. It's not even Leipzig, one of the most unpopular teams. It's this team that nobody even thought about. And I think that's what makes it all the more exciting.
Now, I hate to do this. This is so cynical, but can't help it. We know how this sport is. Looking ahead to the summer, what is the expectation here with Leverkusen? Are they going to get picked apart by clubs from around Europe? Are they going to basically take their cue from their manager who stuck with this team and is coming back for another year when everybody kind of thought he'd be going off to some other club? And are they going to keep this together and make a real run at the Champions League next season?
I think Xabi Alonso staying dictates a lot for this club. I think a lot of players will want to stick around. That being said, I think Leverkusen are also run by people who recognize that they have to probably let 1 or 2 players go in order to facilitate the arrival of new players. Also, it's just smart management. If you think about what they're on the edge of doing, on the verge of achieving, if they go this entire Bundesliga season without losing and then win the cup final and the Europa League final, we are in like the greatest season in football history. An undefeated treble winning season. I don't think we need to have much conversation about any other campaign. But what that means from a player perspective is you kind of get to the end of the year thinking, okay, wow, I think I might have just peaked. Like, what am I going to achieve with this team that I haven't already achieved? We've had such a special 12 months. I probably might need something new. So I think that there's an inevitability of some players saying, what a ride, I'm out. And I think the club also being realistic, if they can bring in 50, 60, 70 million for a couple of players, knowing that some of these players will never be higher in terms of their value than they are right now, then they will. Florian Wirtz staying another year, I think, is pretty likely. I honestly, if Xabi Alonso is going to stay one more year, I'd be very surprised if he leaves unless the offer is astronomical. But I kind of think it makes sense for him to stay another year. But there are some players there, maybe Jeremy Frimpong, for example, who you might say, yeah, okay, if like a regular Champions League side that came in and was like, we really need an exciting wing back, then Leverkusen might think about it. So I wouldn't say they're going to get picked apart, but I wouldn't be surprised if a couple of players left.
And all this is happening while we gaze on the collapsing scenery at Bayern Munich. Like, I know, empires crumble from within and all that, but the way they've crumbled has been unbelievable. And now, after, I'm thinking of the Football Association of Ireland, so I was going to say the most embarrassing managerial search in recent times. But let's say it's the most embarrassing search of a top club in Europe right now. And now they look as if they're on the brink of keeping on the guy who has basically, maybe burned all his bridges at the club. So first of all, is Thomas Tuchel staying? Is that confirmed?
No, so far as I know, but it seems like it's very close. From the people who are reporting on it, the biggest issue at the moment sounds like the length of the new contract. I think from what I understand and the people who are reporting on it, he would like another year on the deal, which I think from his perspective is a case of more assurance.
Feels like the leverage has moved into his court here with the way this is going.
Honestly, I think that he has all of the leverage because Bayern Munich have put themselves in a pretty horrendous situation. And I think they only really have themselves to blame. I think if you track all the way back to the decision to appoint Kahn and Salihamidzic, this is where this starts. That was a premature decision. It turned out that way. And the club has basically been in sort of damage control ever since then. And I think to have so many people turn away from the job is not only embarrassing for them, like you said, JJ, but also just a case of that's a reflection of how much turmoil is now happening at this club in a way that isn't positive. They always used to be FC Hollywood because something was going on. This isn't Hollywood. This is Nightmare Street. This is Freddy Krueger. This is terrible, right? You don't want people to be turning away the job, but you also don't want to be in a situation where the leading players in the group, Harry Kane, are petitioning for the current manager to stay because they believe in him, even though the season, in many respects, has been very underwhelming. I think their Champions League campaign was actually pretty good. I think that goes under the radar, and I think that they're maybe 10 minutes away from making a Champions League final. So that could have changed everything. I think in the Bundesliga that they've been disastrous. I mean, if you think about the fact that they've lost 7 games, that kind of just blows my mind. Bayern Munich losing 7 games in a season is I can't think about it. But I think they only have themselves to blame for bringing themselves into this mess. Does Tuchel staying make the most sense? I mean, yeah, you don't want to be without a manager. I mean, at this point, who are you gonna take? But Tuchel has all the leverage because if he wants to, he could be like, no, I want to go coach Man United.
Yeah.
And he has every right to do that. I think Thomas Tuchel remains a very, very, very good head coach. And I think any player who works with him would probably say, yeah, he's very brutal, but he's also very, very good. I mean, the guy has won the Champions League. The guy has won in the past. He knows what he's doing. But I think Bayern Munich at the moment is not a particularly healthy environment. That club is also in the middle of a bit of a generational shift. Thomas Müller is on the end of his career. Manuel Neuer is on the edge of his career. Defensively, Upamecano is good, but never panned out the way they wanted. Matthias de Ligt is really the only solid defender that they have. Alphonso Davies may be on the way out. Joshua Kimmich has gone from a key player in midfield to a right back. I think there are a lot of question marks about this team. And obviously, Harry Kane only just joined and has done a great job. But if you take him out, we're back as it was before. Is Choupo-Moting an answer? Like it's not what they used to be when you think of how good Bayern Munich were in previous years. It's a disaster.
Do they throw money at it in the summer? Is that what you anticipate?
I anticipate a reaction, and the logical reaction would be to invest. I think that if I was Thomas Tuchel, I would have a lot of clauses in a potential contract renewal that says, and I think he is desperate for a holding midfielder.
Yeah.
I think what became very clear, and I think if you look at the selection of the Champions League semi-final, I think Leon Goretzka is on the way out of that football club. If Leon Goretzka is not coming on, not even participating in a Champions League semi-final, that tells me something about how you feel about he fits in this team. He hasn't played particularly well this season, that's fine. But he's also an extremely experienced midfielder. And if you're picking Alexander Pavlovich because he plays direct vertical passes more often, that's absolutely fine. But it also tells me that you don't think he fits with Konrad Laimer. Konrad Laimer is a starting midfielder for Bayern Munich now, absolutely. But he only really works so well because he's paired with a player like Pavlovich. Pavlovich is so young that you definitely need more depth in that position. So I think he wants a holding midfielder, absolutely. And I think he wants more quality and depth. I mean, Bayern were very unlucky with injuries this season. Let's not forget that. They had some pretty brutal turns at some bad times. Serge Gnabry came back from injury and then got injured again. They have had a fairly poor run of luck. I think that they won't, it's not about buying one 100 million player. I think it's about buying 2 or 3 30, 40 million players, like creating a quality and depth that allows them to be able to handle the way that Thomas Tuchel wants to play across 3 tournaments.
Before we move off of Bayern, one other question I had for you about the managerial situation. If we went back in time a little bit, do you think they regret parting ways with Nagelsmann when they did, or was he maybe not the right guy at the right time? What do you make of that decision?
I think it was a terrible decision. I think it was a decision made, that was a snap judgment. And I also think that was also part of the fault of appointing 2 people who were probably not really, I won't say qualified is not the wrong word, but not experienced enough to be able to recognize what the impact of that decision would be. I think Julian Nagelsmann had done really well. They had a couple of bad performances, but he certainly looked like he had Bayern playing a certain way. And I think that that's really important with coaching, particularly at Bayern Munich. Is it identifiable the way that you're playing football? Is your style evident? And I think that was clear with Nagelsmann. And I think a lot of players were probably a bit surprised by that. And I think the irony is, of course, now that he's Germany head coach. So that could come back to bite Bayern in a certain way. But I think that was a premature decision. It was an expensive decision. If you think about how much they invested in him and made this, huge outlay to go and get him. The fact that they fired him when they did also didn't sit well with me. And I think it just showed a bit of desperation. They were so annoyed that they missed out on Tuchel the first time that they were so desperate not to miss out the second time. Well, be careful what you wish for, because now you're in a situation that makes it look so much worse than it needed to be. Looking
back to last May and watching Borussia Dortmund make a mess on the final day of what should have been the Bundesliga championship. And now you fast forward and they're a Champions League final. I like, how has this, because they seem like a motley crew. I hate being disrespectful, but they seem like a team of parts of some really quality players, some kind of almost top level players, some veterans, and yet they are where they are. How has this happened after such a fairly average league campaign?
I think it's because Edin Terzic is best in a knockout format. I think his coaching is best when it's not stretched over a long league campaign.
Harry Redknapp.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I also think that he is benefiting from, I think the motley crew description is not necessarily a bad one. I think that this is weirdly the right pieces of 5 different jigsaws coming together. And if you look at Dortmund over the last few years, it's been the wrong pieces that haven't fitted, that haven't worked out. And yet, for some reason, and I don't know whether it's even explainable, this set of players does work.
Yeah.
And I think, there were turning points. I think they valued being the underdog in almost every single tie. I think that they were underappreciated or underestimated in the groups. Let's not forget that they won that group.
Yeah.
Everybody
beat Newcastle home and away.
beat Newcastle home and away, and learned the lessons from being in a group with Paris, evidently based on their semi-final performance. Yes, they rode their luck, but anyone who's ever watched any sports knows that teams that make finals ride luck at certain points. That's just part of it. And I think they benefited from playing sensibly in those big games. I mean, Edin Terzic got things absolutely right in Paris in a way that he didn't in the group stages. He got the best out of Mats Hummels at the perfect time of the season. And this is probably the last drips of quality of Mats Hummels' career. He has handled the Marco Reus situation fairly well. That cannot have been easy. You know, this is an absolute club icon. He's leaving at the end of the season, but it doesn't sound like he's been too disgruntled about being a bit part player at this stage of his career, recognizing how well Julian Brandt is playing. I mean, you only need to look at the defense, right? Niklas Süle was supposed to be the guy. He doesn't play, right? Ian Maatsen was a great loan signing, worked out really well. Julian Ryerson, like a hard-working, underrated, fairly solid right back, perfect fit for this team, does the job. And Nico Schlotterbeck's eventually come good in those big games, benefiting from playing next to Mats Hummels. There are so many things that I think have come together in a way that was hard to predict. And even Edin Terzic getting things right, I think people didn't think that. He's not, I don't think many people think he's an elite coach, but it's hard to argue with the fact that he's taken a team to a Champions League final. Look, he's benefited from being the underdog in a lot of games. They swept PSV aside, but Atletico was a whirlwind. The goal from Haller in Madrid is a huge moment. Let's not forget, without that, it doesn't happen the way that it happens in Dortmund. Sabitzer having these remarkably unexpected turns of form at the right time helps, sets up a bit more of a base of foundation in midfield. And the Jadon Sancho signing. But that's also shrewd management. If you watch the weeks building up to the Champions League run, Terzic is slowly bedding him in, letting him regain his confidence. Just a sign of good coaching, smart man management, recognizing what your player needs in a certain situation to shine. And then he plays probably the best game of football he's played in 12 months on the biggest stage against Paris Saint-Germain. I don't know whether it's explainable in that sense, because as you said, the league campaign has been so poor. I think anyone who's watched them, it feels like it's Jekyll and Hyde, to be honest. I just don't see the same team in Europe. I will say that I'd be surprised if they won it, just because there is an inevitability about Real Madrid that feels a bit like Thanos. You just can't stop him, right?
Oh, right.
I do think, and the whole thing with Jude, I think adds an emotional touch to it. But if I could wish for anything, it would be that Marco Reus ends his career with something other than just a German Cup, because the man should have been a Bundesliga champion last season, as you said. Isn't, and I think it would be fitting for him to win something.
Fabulous footballer.
Yeah.
An icon, a fabulous footballer, and I think were it not for injuries, would have been decorated far more. And he's just been unlucky. He's been very unlucky.
Jonathan, leaving the Bundesliga, but let's stay in Germany. Huge summer coming up, of course, with the Euros headed there. Germans haven't gotten out of the group of the last two World Cups, knocked out of the round of 16 at the last Euros. Maybe the feeling is it was a team in transition. Is the transition complete now? Is this team ready to contend for titles again?
That's what everybody hopes. It's been fascinating. Look, I've been very fortunate to cover the team over the last decade, and I think it's been a pretty brutal decade since the World Cup win in Brazil. 2016 was actually pretty good. I think people forget that they were very close, lost that semi-final to France. But since then, my goodness, it's been pretty bad. And I think this team is ready to get out of the groups. I can confidently say I don't think that Germany will be going home early in this one. I think that the key thing was the decision taken in December, January, when no one was looking. I was in Vienna for the defeat against Austria, and it was bad. Nagelsmann was kind of floundering. It felt like we were heading for a pretty disastrous summer. But when nobody was looking and everybody was taking a break and the Bundesliga came back, it's clear that Nagelsmann had some pretty tough conversations with his staff and made some pretty big decisions. I mean, the squad just came out today. He's not picked Hummels, which I think is not necessarily as much of a surprise as it might appear. Hummels is a very talented player. He's come into form late in the season, but the guy's 35. If you don't start him, it's a problem. And if you have him on the bench and Jonathan Tah and Antonio Rudiger play one bad game, you start a conversation that you could have just avoided if you don't pick him. And look, Jonathan Tah and Antonio Rudiger absolutely should be Germany's starting centre backs this summer. So there's no debate about that. But like Hummels, an omission. Leon Goretzka, a bit of a surprise, to be honest with you, but I think that's his Bayern form that's cost him. And Julian Brandt, maybe the biggest of all, because Julian Brandt has had a sensational season. But I think all of this comes back to what I think Nagelsmann decided in December and January, and that is, if we're going to change the way that German football is heading, we're going to have to make some pretty big decisions. And he's made them. He wants 4 goalkeepers. That's a pretty big call for a squad, even with 26.
Right.
But it's clear. Yeah, it is strange, but his reasoning was pretty, and I think it's kind of insightful in some respects, because what he's saying is, I want 4 goalkeepers because I don't want an uneven number. I don't want one left out, and I want us to have training regimes set up in a very clear way. Okay, you maybe, but it's clear that he has a starting 11 and he has maybe 5 or 6 players other than that are going to feature, and everybody else just needs to be the right character for the group. He even admitted at the press conference today that if UEFA had said that they would have allowed 30-man squads, he would not have picked 30 players. Okay. This is a man who wants smaller squads, which to me indicates he's taking 26 because he's not an idiot and he doesn't want to take 23 when every other country in Europe is taking 26. He doesn't want to be shorthanded. Fine. But there are only really 15, 16 players in this squad that matter. Everybody else has to be the right character to contribute. So that's why Robin Koch gets picked instead of Mats Hummels, because Robin Koch is going to turn up for training and give it 150% and love being there, and is never going to be upset if he doesn't play. Mats Hummels may be a different situation. Long way round to the question. In March, they played so well that I think that he felt vindicated by those changes, and now feels we're heading in a direction where it's like, yeah, we're going all in on this way. I think that Germany need to start the tournament well. When they were in Qatar, I ended up speaking to Danny Rule a bit afterwards, and the assistant coach who's now at Sheffield Wednesday. And look, he said what everybody else said. The Japan game was the turning point, because if they don't lose that game, they get out of the group and the whole tournament changes for them. Yeah. I think the same is true here. Scotland at home, intense away crowd, home expectation, everybody's watching. Win that game 3-0, Germany make the quarters, even the semis. If it's a 1-1 draw, now we're back at where we've been in every single tournament since 2018, and it's a nightmare scenario. So that's what they have to avoid. I think they will. I think the team is in great form. The off-field campaign to create closeness with the country has started. The team just needs to play well on the field. I'm confident that the quarterfinal spot is manageable, and I think that would be a big step in the right direction.
Just one thing we remarked on at the last tournament in a major tournament in Qatar was the kind of, I don't know, lack of a clear, obvious center forward striker. And that's where we saw most of the Nicholas Füllkrug slander, which is like, why? How is he starting for Germany? How is he in this position? Who will score the goals?
Kai Havertz or Florian Wirtz will probably score a lot of goals. I think Kai Havertz's form for Arsenal means that he is a guaranteed starter. I think Nicholas Füllkrug's form in the Champions League creates a headache for Nagelsmann, but not really. I think Havertz will start. I think Füllkrug will be the guy that comes off the bench for the last 30 minutes.
Right.
I think it's clear the way that Nagelsmann wants to play, that Havertz will be the guy based on movement. I think Havertz's movement and what he does off the ball is more important than Füllkrug's ability to score. I think that's why Havertz will start. Florian Wirtz will be the key. Excuse me. Wirtz will be the key. Sané will be on the bench, I predict, because he'll play Wirtz, Gundogan, Musiala, and Sané will be impact player off the bench like Füllkrug. Okay. So the goals will come from those 4. You might even see Gundogan score more, a la his City season where he scored 13 or 16 or something.
So you want a mobile front 3?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's how he'll play. The way he played against the Netherlands and France, because he's got 3 playmakers there in Musiala and Wirtz and Gundogan. And if you push Gundogan forward, which you automatically have to do by selecting Kroos, because you can't play Kroos and Gundogan. So it'll be Kroos and Andrich. You open up a different side to Gundogan, who I don't think we've seen that much in the national team. And then the goals can come from anywhere, but probably Havertz. I'm not concerned about the goals per se, because I think that the chance creation is so high or going in the right direction that I think at this level, you just need the right person there. And Havertz playing in that position for Arsenal certainly benefits Germany, because it gives him experience in that position. And Füllkrug off the bench is no bad choice. I mean, the guy's become a striker I never thought he would become, which is crazy, but it's hard to argue with him when he's scoring goals in a Champions League semi-final.
Fascinating time. Bundesliga, incredible season wrapping up this summer. Euros headed to Germany in a fascinating campaign for the German national team. Jonathan, we thank you so much for taking us through this. It should be a fun summer. I know you'll be busy, but we'd love to check in with you again as the Euros are playing out. Thanks so much, man.
That would be great. Yeah, hopefully we can make it happen. And thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.